I have met people who claimed to be Satanists, who claimed to be involved with black magic, who claimed that they not only knew a lot about it, but as I said, I've certainly never been involved, and I warn all of you, never, never, never. You will not only lose your mind, you lose your soul.
Bless the Lord, O my soul, blessed art thou, Lord.
Now before we start, I have to warn you in advance, the subject discussed here, and also a couple of the clips here, can be heavy for some of you. On the other hand, I feel it is also important to let you know about the problems out in the world today when it comes to people practicing the occult and worshiping the devil. I'm sure some of you have listened to this video of Father Chad Ripperger from 10 years ago, but it actually inspired me to do the video this time.
Witchcraft is drastically on the rise, especially among young women between the ages of 14 and 30. And we might think that why is Father giving a homily on witchcraft, because none of us practice it? That may be the case. But the fact of the matter is that it's been so much drastically on the rise that very often people find themselves in a neighborhood which has witches in it.
Anyway, there's a conversion story of an ex-witch who also worshipped Baphomet that I really want to share with you. And it has similar theme to what she went through in the beginning. I mean, similar to what the guy who played the spirit board in the previous video went through. They were both depressed, they did not know God, and they felt worthless.
Because I was just so weighed down by shame and guilt and the dark things that I was doing. I felt like nobody loved me. That all I had to offer was like what I could bring to somebody, and then they would hang out with me. And it was kind of out of desperation, seeing my sister find this peace, that I was just like, you know what? Why not? If there was a chance that I can find some sort of peace and some sort of reason for being, as like weird as it is, like and Christian cliche as it is, like when it says that God gave me a purpose, I had no purpose. And so when I gave my life to the Lord eventually, and like that was the greatest feeling that I had ever felt in my life, knowing that my life had some sort of meaning, because I had gone my entire life not thinking that I meant anything to anybody. And to know that God loved me enough to give me some sort of calling and assignment meant so much to me.
And now compare that to what she said here.
And when I went through that was when everything went dark, like the lights went out. Darkness came in, and I bought like Baphomet statues, I bought Lucifer statues, and I was never into that. Even I was like, I am so sick and tired, literally, I'm sick and tired of my life, of this pain, of this darkness, because it took me years to get over the abortion. Like, I was so ashamed.
And do you remember this clip of Father Iannuzzi I shared with you before? Try and reflect on this just for a moment.
In hell, however, there is fright, there is despair, there is trembling. In hell, that kind of fear exists. It's a complete despair, without any hope of love. But as long as we have hope on earth, there is always the love of God in our hearts that keeps us from that absolute despair.
The reality is, as I've shared with you before, the interest in occult, New Age, and magical practices such as witchcraft, astrology, tarot, and spiritual energy has grown notably in recent years, often tied to broader trends like the rise of spiritual but not religious identities. And did you know that there are actually people out there offering courses to teach others how to do these things, such as this one?
Now, you may know already that as a chaos magician, I really listen. I do my best to listen to the gods, what they're telling me, and where they want me to go. Following synchronicity has always been the cornerstone of my practice. And for the last several years, my practice has been very much dedicated to the Norse gods and to learning and understanding the runes. That has been an incredible experience, and it's something that has really changed my practice. But now I've heard the call, and I understand it's time for me to move on. That's not to say I won't be working with the runes anymore. Of course I will. I never let go of anything. I continue to work with all of the practices from all of these amazing teachers that I've had. But like I said, I've heard the call. It's time to make a change. Now, as you can see, my altar is now dedicated to the mother of demons, Lilith. Lilith is who is called to me.
We often hear the exorcists warning us about people practicing the New Age, or calling out to the universe for help, or worship the Norse god, etc. But somehow it always like I'm unable to really relate to the warnings, so to speak, that I see them as far away or not around me. I'm not sure how to put it, but once we're able to put a face on these people that the exorcists are talking about, perhaps this can move us all to really take seriously the plea and warnings of the priests, and to really try and share and talk about our Lord Jesus with them, because they need him. They really need him. And whenever I share clips like this with you, it's not so we can all be judges in a court in this video, but it's really to spread the awareness about the realities out there and not turn a blind eye to these people who need the Savior in their lives, to snatch them away from the devil's grasp.
When people stray from God, they are left empty. This is where the root of all problems begin. You've strayed away from God. You no longer are under the umbrella of his protection. You are basically now fair game for Satan. You know, the pit bull on the chain is sort of like the devil. It's a 4-foot chain. As long as you don't stray within 4 feet of that pit bull, you're going to be safe. You're staying under the protection of God. When you leave the protection of God, you're entering into the 4-foot radius of that chain. And now you are going to be slashed at by that pit bull.
Anyway, I told you in the beginning of this video that I want to share the clip of the ex-witch who worshipped Baphomet, right? So here you go.
Well, I didn't realize I was dealing with demons, and I didn't know what I was working with, what I was dealing with, but I was still, like I said, I had the ability to see. And so I could see, so if I was to look at a person, like let's say it was a client that would come to me, I can look at that person and I can see different spots of darkness around them where there's an open door. So I could always see that. And I could see strongholds, even though I wouldn't call them strongholds. I'd see these black lines coming off of them, which meant that there was a bloodline. It showed timelines, bloodlines. So I could literally see this in people. And the reason I knew it was real was because when I worked with them, that darkness would go, and then they would tell me, well, these things have changed. This thing isn't happening anymore. And after we'd do some work together, these things would lift. So I didn't know they were demons that needed to be removed. And I didn't know that we needed Jesus to cast them out. But these things were happening. So I didn't experience darkness. I think the enemy knew that if I started to experience it, then I would stop. So it's all fluffy, love and light, probably until about 2022. And that's when I started seeing darkness. That was when these things stopped posing as angels and showed up as who they really were. And I had about a year where I had to just battle strongholds. And for me, it felt like I'm going to try and get my power back here. I can't have, I can see this realm and I have no choice. So I need to know how to fight, and I need to know how to stand strong in this and have authority in myself. I didn't know Christ, but I knew I had to have authority. But that was the time where I have one memory of being woken up. This was like a 10-day period I went through. I got woken up, I could smell smoke. And I thought, oh my gosh, the house is on fire. I panicked. I jumped out of bed. And as soon as I got into my hallway, the smell was completely gone. I thought, that's strange. And I was like, okay, went back to bed. The next day I woke up and the light was on. I was like, well, that's weird. I didn't fall asleep with the light on. I know I didn't. And then the next night the TV would come on. I was in the bath one day. Suddenly this huge loud noise came over through my whole house, and the TV had been switched on. The oven got switched on. And I was like, oh, okay, this is dark. And there were a few times where I try and go to sleep and I could feel something trying to get into my body. It was like static, because demons look like this sometimes. They're like static balls of energy. People see these things. You don't want to play with that. You want to cast that out, because when they try and get in you, it's like you're watching a static TV. And it kept trying, and I could feel its energy. It was really like, I don't care if this is your body, I want it. It was trying to get in. So that was a really scary time in my life. I actually had to get someone to come in and do a whole clearing. And the day she was going to cast this thing out, she was a fellow witch at the time. I went to a hotel to stay somewhere else so that I wasn't in the house when she did it. And the fire alarm went off at 1:00 in the morning in the hotel. And I rang her and she was like, yeah, the demon's not in your house. It's following you. Well, that literally that scared me. I was out of my depth. But how the enemy always used me, he used my compassion against me. And that is, I've always felt misunderstood. I've always felt really different and weird in the world. And so I have compassion for people who come to me and say, I feel different. So he uses that against me. Well, maybe these things are just misunderstood. Maybe they're not dark. Maybe we just think they are. And that, again, the door gets open and further and further and further and further. So it got pretty dark. But I know that when I went through a really tough time when I was in Australia. We're not going to blame Australia, but I went through a really tough time in Australia. And I ended up in a relationship that was not good. And I ended up having an abortion in 2021, which ruined my life. And when I went through that, that was when everything went dark. Like the lights went out, darkness came in, and I bought like Baphomet statues, I bought Lucifer statues, and I was never into that. Never. I was always fluffy tarot cards with flowers and rainbows and angels on it. Now I was like, no, I want things with darkness on it. And I want pentagrams and I want skull pictures and I want, it got really, really, really dark. And I had an encounter with probably like 3 years ago where I was in bed and I'd moved bedrooms. Okay. I had 2 bedrooms in my house. So I was like, this room's tainted. We've cleared that out. I'm going to move my bed into the office and we're going to switch rooms. Here we go. This is better. Nice and fresh. No, woke up one night and this feeling, this is probably the closest I've gotten to the feeling of hell in the air, was that I woke up and there was a coldness, like a complete void. It was like I was in a vacuum. It was dark, it was empty, and it was so like if I look back, that's my experience of not feeling God at all, like not even having him around me. And this thing emerged from the corner of my room, this dark sort of thing that came from the corner of my room. And as it got closer, I could start to see these horns and this sort of goat head. And I didn't know about the Baphomet. I bought the statue after this because I wanted to worship him. But he sort of walked up to me. And again, I'm out of my depth. I'm so used to seeing things. But this was getting so beyond my depth now. I didn't know how to have power in this realm. And I'm laying flat with my knees up kind of by my chest. And he went and put his hands like this on my knees. And he went to go and pull my knees apart. And I slammed my knees shut. And I was like, that's why I've read stories of witches having, sleeping with the devil in the forest. I read stories. Oh, she slept with the devil. She's had interest in all this stuff in the woods with the devil. I read those stories and I was like, that's real. That's a real thing. That's the first place he tried to get into, if I can put it as gracefully as possible. So again, the compassion came through. Oh, maybe he's misunderstood. Maybe he is good. maybe people just don't understand him. Maybe people have put a persona on him that's not true. So I went on this sort of trip of studying the Baphomet, studying the occult. So that was sort of, I would say, 2 years, well, maybe a year and a half of being that dark. And then Jesus started to call me. Thank the Lord. Because I remember looking at my altar and I was like, well, you know what? I should get a cross because I've got everything else. I've got Hecate, I've got Lucifer over here, I've got Eve, I've got this and that. Like I might as well get a cross because Jesus is also, I put him in the same category. So there was sort of call of he was starting to weave into my life. And I got to the point where I was just so desperate. Like that's the only word I can use. I was so desperate. I was like, I am so sick and tired, literally. I'm sick and tired of my life, of this pain, of this darkness, because it took me years to get over the abortion. Like I was so ashamed and thinking to myself, well, I've got all these angels around me supposedly, but where are they now when I need them the most? So that was sort of a, hold on a second. So I was so tired. And I think God let me get to the point where I was like, I've got nothing left. Like there's nothing.
Well, what do you think of her story? And there's actually another clip of Father Ripperger I want to share with you, which is about 2 minutes long. But what she went through is explained in detail by Father Ripperger here.
The effects of the witchcraft and magic, in the bad sense, are multiple. The first is possession of the person who performs the witchcraft and of others towards whom the witchcraft is directed. They can also become obsessed, or they can cause obsession of others, and that's when the demonic cause constant images in their imagination and the person can't get their mind off and it can drive them to a psychological illness. Then it can also cause oppression of the person who performs the witchcraft or oppression of others towards whom witchcraft is directed. The demonic influence can also occur in animals such as dogs and cats or pets or things of this sort. There can be demonic infestation of houses as a result of magic, either one's own when one performs the magic, or those in the neighborhood. Sometimes priests have to exorcise people's houses because of the activities of witches in the neighborhood, I know of a case whose woman's house is completely possessed because there's an active witch coven right next door to her. There can be infestations of cars so that the cars don't work properly, or machinery, or things of this sort. And this can occur in any other physical possession which won't work properly. We can see that can be the effect of magic.
Here's the problem. Do you think someone like her would have created a video like this if Christians hadn't asked her questions in the comment section in the first place?
Okay, so I'm a Christian, but I want to get into occultism. Can I do that? Is that like, speed running to hell, or is that allowed? So, many occult traditions you cannot do as a Christian, but there certainly are some. And in fact, many of the greatest occultists from history were Christians, specifically people like John Dee. And many occult practices are actually quite Abrahamic, so you can do it. But you do need to understand, as a Christian, there will be some limitations upon you, right? You can't really invoke multiple gods, you can't worship gods, obviously, and certain specific practices like beneficium, or the use of poison plants, will absolutely be against the rules. As well, things like hexing and cursing are definitely outside the wheelhouse of most Christian practices. But yeah, you can be a Christian occultist. It just is going to have a lot more restrictions, and it would be advisable for you to look at Christian occult sources and not, general broad occult sources exclusively.
And there's a video that I just recently discovered. I know it's not a new video, but still, what he did and later on said really show how the devil is working out there in the world.
I remember when I was in the witchcraft, bro, I used to go to the Catholic churches.
Wow.
I would bring my crystals, like my big crystals, into the Catholic churches. I would bring them literally where I forgot what it's called, like the tabernacle, the gold thing they have, and I would charge my crystals in there.
You charge them in there?
I'd be in there and I'd be I would be meditating inside the Catholic church during the day and put the crystals in there to charge.
Wow.
I thought they were charging good energy. One time a janitor saw me. Shout out to that janitor. He was like, oh, he's like, get out.
Wow.
I didn't know I was doing witchcraft, bro. I was so comfortable in the Catholic church because there's so much idolatry. God, if you're Catholic, man, my recommendation is read your Bible, read your word, and really just seek the Lord yourself, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of idolatry, man. A lot of witches and warlocks hide in the Catholic church.
Now, for the second half of this video, I've prepared the next few clips specifically for the new people on this channel, and I hope all of you are going to learn so much from these clips as well. I've shared a clip of Father Luke Fletcher, reminding us that we should not give up on people, even those who seem so far lost from God, even those who worship the devil, performing the Black Mass, etc. It's never too late for anyone as long as they're alive. They still have time for conversion, and we need to do our parts and keep on praying for their conversion.
St. Paul was the persecutor of the early church. He had studied under this famous rabbi that we know about from other sources called Gamaliel. He was very zealous, and he was persecuting the church. And he was got papers from the high priest of the temple in Jerusalem, and he was traveling around, throwing people in jail. And he gets close to Damascus, and he has this encounter with the risen Jesus. So this is after Jesus is crucified and risen, ascended back to the Father. This is after all of that happened. Now he has this encounter with Jesus, who says to him, "Why are you persecuting me?" That's the first detail that's really interesting. St. Paul could have said, well, I'm not persecuting you. I'm persecuting your followers, which is true. He's persecuting the church. But Jesus so self-identified with his church, with his people, that if you're persecuting a Christian, you are persecuting Jesus himself. And this is a complete revolution for St. Paul. He's literally blinded by the light of the glorious Jesus. And for 3 days, he was praying and fasting. And then on the third day, the Lord sent this other church member, Ananias, to pray over him. He receives his sight back, and he's baptized, and he becomes the great apostle, St. Paul. And just as he had worked hard to eliminate Christianity before his conversion, he worked twice as hard after to promote Christianity. And there are a couple of big takeaways. The first one that's most obvious is, are you ready? God never gives up on anyone. Right? God never gives up on anyone, nor should we. So anybody we meet, even if somebody's satanic, somebody's, completely working for the devil, we still love them. We pray for them, and we hope for their conversion. How amazing, right? That's how love conquers. The love of God conquers. And so we never give up on anyone. And so the list can go on and on and on. Whoever, might be kind of, could I put it this way? playing for the other team, like somehow under the devil's influence or kind of working for evil or giving themselves over to a life of sin, could become a great apostle. Now, to conclude, I'll share a story with you. The details of this story are going to be vague. So, when a priest hears confessions, what's said in there is absolute. We can't talk about it. But I will say that over the decades of being a priest, I've had many beautiful moments where somebody had, had quite a difficult time when they were younger. And then they have this beautiful grace of conversion. They come to the Lord seeking his mercy and forgiveness. And in those moments, I received a grace, which I would love to share with you today. And it's this: we know that God is outside of space and time. God is in a completely different category than we're in. And so sometimes the things of God are hard to understand. If you ever have a moment when you think, I can't quite wrap my brain about this God stuff, good. If you think you completely, totally have it figured out, you're probably off, right? And so if God is all-knowing and all-powerful and all-loving, and he's outside of space and time, and he knows and sees everything, so that moment of great sin for a person, and later on in life, they go to confession, and they're on their knees crying and saying, Lord, I'm sorry, please forgive me. The Lord sees both of those moments at the same time. And what's even more amazing is that God already knows the version of us that will be in heavenly glory for eternity. For those of us who will be saved and make it to heaven, that version of you that will enter into God's glory for eternity, what you could truly call the best version of yourself, God already knows that version now. And so knowing that, he's allowing us to experience so much struggle and trial and grace here to help get us there, get us ready for that.
And then just another clip of Father Reehil again, and this time it's about a woman who so foolishly invited the demon into her life.
Some people have no sense of what they're doing. I had an attorney, so we would assume this has to be an intelligent woman, right? She has a law degree. She saw things moving on her bedroom bureau, like little antique figurines that were moving around. And she says she's an atheist. Well, she was at the time. And she thought, well, what's making that happen? Well, if there's somebody in the room, hold my hand. Okay, permission number one. And something grabbed her hand. So eventually she says, well, I'm going to sleep now. If you want to come into bed with me, you can. And she invited into bed. By night 3, she's being raped. But that was a really very stupid thing to do, to be quite honest. But because she had no faith, no understanding of the demonic, she had never read the Bible. She doesn't know about the stories of Jesus casting these things out. I would think, given her age, she was in her 40s, she should have at some point known or heard somewhere, watched the movie The Exorcist or whatever, where she could at least say, maybe this is real.
Now let me share this clip of Msgr. Stephen Rossetti instead, where he talks a little bit about the despair that comes from hell.
One thing I've noticed working with those who have demonic afflictions is oftentimes when you ask them how they're feeling, especially when the demons are beginning to manifest, they'll say, I feel this incredibly powerful sense of despair, and it's all overwhelming. And that should be a sign to the exorcist that there are demons present and they're manifesting in that way. Where does all despair ultimately come from? Of course, it comes from hell. There is no hope in hell because there is no God. As Dante said in the Inferno, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. And also, St. Faustina spoke to us of the 7 sufferings of hell. And one of those major sufferings is despair. It is a hallmark of hell and the presence of demons. I was listening to a near-death experience the other day. And of course, these are not de fide, but I find them, some of them interesting. And perhaps I think there is some truth to many of them because they have the real signs of the truth. And this man sadly died and was on the brink of hell, and Jesus saved him, thank God. But he said what he felt was this overpowering despair. He said this despair was worse than all the sufferings of hell because there's just no hope, no hope. So the takeaway from this first, exorcists, when you see your clients feeling this powerful sense of despair, let them know this is not them, this comes from the demons. And so for those of you who feel despair, whether you have a demonic affliction or not, all despair ultimately does come from the dark world and the demons. So what do? We reject them. We rebuke them. We renounce them. So we do the 3 R's. I reject this despair. I rebuke this despair. I renounce these demons of despair. And in Jesus' name, I cast them out. In his holy name, I cast them out. And then we look to Jesus. We say a prayer. Jesus is our hope. Jesus, our hope, come to us. Fill my heart with your presence. Fill my heart with your hope and your peace. And especially those of you who might be somewhat suicidal. Sometimes these impulses, these despair, actually do come from demons. And we have several cases of those whose suicidal tendencies actually come from the dark world directly. But ultimately, they come either directly or indirectly from the evil one.
And finally, for the last clip of this revision, let me share with you this story again for all of you who are new here. A clip from my Zoom session with Father Winston, the exorcist from the Philippines.
One of my experiences was Father Sikia and I came from just a deliverance ministry to a community of religious sisters in the province. And on the way home, I stayed with our brothers in a convent in the province so that I will not need to travel back to Manila, because on the following day I will have an event, another appointment in the same house or institution. So I stayed in the school's mini hotel. So they have a mini hotel that's intended for the guests. I thought that there will be other guests there. It was only I found out it was only myself who is housed in that mini hotel. There was no one else. So when we arrived, everything was closed, but they were expecting me, the brothers were expecting me, but I cannot be accommodated in the convent because there are already other guest priests there. So I had to stay in the mini hotel, and I was the only one there. So I told our driver, the car driver, we will stay here. And the driver said, no, Father, I'm going back to Manila. Anyway, I'm going to pick you up the following day, late afternoon. So I still can go home. So, okay, I said, so bring down everything, my things, including the exorcism kit, because I already had an inkling that there's something that's not, you'll never know. I always have that kit with me wherever I go. So what is inside the kit? You said holy water, blessed salt, blessed oil, and a crucifix, my stole, priestly stole, and the prayer book. It's always there. I always carry that bag with me because you'll never know. So I went to the hotel room. I did not pick the corner rooms. I was in the middle room. And then I was there for the night to rest, took a shower, did my night prayers, blessed my room, and then went to sleep. 3 o'clock in the morning, the things that you were telling me occurred. First, knocking at the door. There was knocking at the door. Then, before the knocking at the door, the faucet inside the bathroom suddenly opened. I can hear the water. And I said, OMG, this is it. And then the knocking at the door, constant knocking, and then scratches. I can hear fingernails scratching the wall behind the television set. And then there were movements as if walking on the ceiling. So I prayed first. And I said, my guardian angel, please expel the spirits so that I can sleep. I still have an event tomorrow. Well, as I was joking myself, the things continued, the manifestation continued, and perhaps the guardian angel was telling me, "You are the priest. You should be able to respond to this. I'm here to strengthen you and strengthen your faith, but not to do this expulsion. You do that expulsion. You are the priest. You know what to do." So what I did was, I opened the kit because it was beside me, and then got the holy water, blessed oil, blessed salt, put on the stole, and I prepared myself to pray. Then opened the book for the deliverance of the room. And then after the prayer of deliverance, I started to bless again the room for the purpose of deliverance, anoint the walls with blessed oil, and placed blessed salt in the corners. That stopped things. It stopped. And then I thank God. After that, cleansing prayers, thanksgiving to the Lord, and went back to sleep. And it was quiet since then. So this is in a mini hotel. Now, can lay people do that? Yes. This is what I advise. Again, I said, go and download the prayer that is found in the AMO website, www.amoe.ph. And you'll find there also deliverance and blessing of a room. So you can use that prayer to bless and do deliverance in your room. And wherever you go, unknown places, in a hotel, in a resort, or in a relative's place, and that you do not know their Christian life, or you know that they are not living a consecrated life to the Lord, then you can use those prayers. In fact, I have many friends and those that I knew who used that prayer and said, Father, since I used that prayer, I never had nightmares either in my room or in any room that I will sleep in for the night. I think that's very effective. Of course, again, it presumes that you live in grace. Because if you do not live in grace, the first thing that happens to us is we will have fear that we will not be protected because we are in alienation with God. When we are in the state of grace, we know that we have confidence that we are friends of the Lord. We have confidence that we are truly children of God. And therefore, what we ask in His name, He will grant us because we are His children. We are confident. But if we are not friends of God, we do not live according to His holy will, then we will not have confidence in believing and trusting that He will protect us. So this is something always a good practice. So go and download that prayer. It's in PDF form, so you have that on your mobile phone, and every time you'll be traveling, you can use that prayer. So what is in the kit? What is in the kit? Well, as I said, you can holy water, blessed oil, blessed salt, and you can also have blessed candles. Or now I've seen other people, they buy small bells. They buy small bells and have the priest bless the bell so that it will be a holy bell, a blessed bell, and they will use that in their places that they go.
Well then, that will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And hopefully all of you have learned so much from this video. And remember, if ever you have any feedback or suggestion, please let us know in the comments below. Anyway, if you like what we do and you'd like to support us, I left a link to our PayPal donation in the description box below, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. And until the next one, thanks again for watching and may God bless you.